I think what the Mayor of London says deeply disgraceful, that the fascists of the 1930s massacred millions of people. And Mr. Trump is the democratically elected president of our closest ally. I think that Mr. Khan demeans his office, demeans the nation. What he has said is quite wrong and deeply improper. So I think for the president to hit back and say that he's a failed Mayor of London, which is true, with spiralling knife crime, deeply congested roads, general incompetence in City Hall, is fair enough. So I'm backing Mr. Trump in this row.
Do you think we should be rolling out the red carpet, though, for this man?
Yes, of course we should. He is our closest ally. The security of the United Kingdom is closely tied in with our friendship with the United States. We're commemorating D-Day, when American lives were lost, sacrificed to save freedom in Europe and to save freedom in the United Kingdom. We should be thanking him for what his country has done in the past and for the relationship we need in the future.
Is this very much then about the office of the presidency and about the country and our history, our shared history together, rather than about basically, rolling out the red carpet for Donald J. Trump, the Apprentice star, owner of Trump Towers, etc., etc.?
It is always about the office. And that's the key thing. That's why we welcomed the president of China. Now, we are commemorating the 30th anniversary of Tiananmen Square, when hundreds, possibly thousands of Chinese people calling for freedom were massacred. But the real politique of it is that we have to welcome Chinese presidents. And that is how the world works. President Trump is not responsible for this type of evil. He is a close ally and essential through his nation to our security. Of course we should be rolling out the red carpet. It should be of the deepest red and the finest hue.
I worked with Rory in the Ministry of Justice for 16 months. I've seen what an impressive minister he is, both good at strategy, the big picture stuff, but also completely on top of the details. I think he's an excellent communicator. I think he's someone who can bring the country together. And I think he's somebody who is setting out the true choices and options that exist on Brexit. It's not motivated by wishful thinking. I think he's telling the truth and setting out the real choices, and I think he would make an excellent Prime Minister. A
lot of people are saying, look, Rory Stewart, with all due respect, him isn't going to win this contest. He's not going to go out to the final two, and even if he did, he wouldn't win it with the Tory party members, and that actually your endorsement and indeed his standing is all actually a little bit of a stalking horse for Michael Gove. Is your support not really for him?
Well, I think Rory would be the best person, and I hope that he, at the end of this process, becomes Prime Minister. There are other good candidates. I think Matt Hancock is running a really good campaign and is a very impressive candidate. And it is true to say that I think Michael is an impressive candidate as well. But Rory is the person that I want to win. And I think when it comes to a vote like this, we should demonstrate who we want best, we want most.
Do I take it, though, when you list the candidates you found impressive, you chose not to mention the front runner, Boris Johnson, that you don't find him impressive?
I'm going to focus on accentuate the positive, Julia, which is I think that impressive though Boris is, there are even more impressive candidates than him.
Hard politics, hard diplomacy, real interests are not going to be affected by this stuff. I think actually, if I may make a personal comment, that Sadiq Khan's calling Trump a fascist is ludicrous, particularly in a week when we and the Americans and many others are going to commemorate driving the fascists, the real fascists, out of France through the D-Day landing 75 years ago. So it cheapens everything when an elected official like Sadiq Khan, as important as he uses this word in Trump's connection.
Well, this is it. I mean, I'm very much of the view that I'm not a fan of Donald Trump, but he's the choice of the American people. And this is about honouring the office of the American presidency rather than the man, the individual.
Exactly that, Julia.
Jeremy Corbyn wants to be the Prime Minister of this great nation. And he is going to have to, if he is, do wonderful things with America. It's our biggest trading partner. It's our biggest inward investor. It's the guarantor of our security. It is the pillar of a democracy, whatever we may say. And you've got the democratically elected leader of our best friend, and they've got many faults, but they are our best friend in so many ways. Don't listen to what people say, watch what they do. And you've got him standing there this morning, actually leading a protest against the person that this nation is thinking of electing to go and deal with the man. I think that is absolutely disgusting if he wants to be the job. And that is different to exercising the right in our nation for peaceful protest. There's two things there. He is in a position of responsibility he wants to be, representing the nation, dealing with a country that's so important to us. And anybody you know who wants to ban Trump coming or stop him speaking, just get real. This country is so vital to Britain. We certainly ought not to be down on our knees saying, oh, how grateful we are and thank you, Donald. Certainly not. And that guy personally, he's not somebody I'd want dinner with. But I have to tell you, he is the democratically elected leader of our best friend. And I don't want to see the bloke who wants our vote as Prime Minister sitting down in a protest against the guy.
When I was looking this morning at the latest numbers, a very interesting statistic, I think, from one of the websites is that 52% of Conservative MPs have announced who they're backing, 48% have not, which is an interesting set of statistics. So that means that almost half my colleagues are undeclared. And when we have the hustings next week, I'll be setting out my arguments about my plan to deliver Brexit, the other things I'm interested in reminding people of the Conservative Party is about freedom and about opportunity. And I'll set out my stall as the only candidate in this race who hasn't been part of the government for the last 3 years, who hasn't been party to the mistakes that have been made, which are why we haven't managed to deliver on the promises we made 3 years ago.
What would you say to those who would think that a little bit cynically that this is about, for an awful lot of those candidates who haven't got a chance of getting into the final two, that this is actually just about, well, trying to wangle a decent job offer at the end of the day and raising your profile rather than actually being a serious candidate to be effectively the next Prime Minister of this country?
Well, I know people do say that about people. I'm very clear. I'm in this to win the race. I wouldn't be doing it otherwise. As I said, I've served in the cabinet under David Cameron, so I know what that's like. I think I've got something to offer to my colleagues. I shall be setting that out clearly when we have the hustings kicking off next week, and I hope to do very well.
A point I made to my colleagues this morning before we came on air, actually, you're, I think, with all due respect, not a household name, Mark Harper, as a former Chief Whip, but I pointed out that was probably meant you were rather good as a Chief Whip, because when you know the Chief Whip's name, it usually means things are going horribly wrong for a government.
Well, that's exactly what I've said to people. The difficulty when your cabinet job was being Chief Whip is the sort of job that if you're doing it well, nobody should know who you are, and you shouldn't be going and doing media interviews, and people only generally find out who you are if it isn't going well. So I tend to flip it around and say, if you don't know who I am, that's because I did a good job as Chief Whip.
I'm happy to serve under whoever the party elects and support their policy. So it worries me that Bob thinks that there's going to be Conservative MPs that wouldn't do that.
Well, we already know, do we not, Bob Neal, that there are a number, the likes of Philip Hammond, the likes of Dominic Grieve has said certainly they would vote to revoke Article 50. That would be in breach of their manifesto commitments they stood on at their own general elections in 2017, at which point you effectively are voting no confidence in the government if you bring them down over that, wouldn't they? Do you expect that would happen?
I certainly hope it wouldn't, and I wouldn't encourage anyone to do that. But I'm a realist about the maths of the House of Commons, and it's not just Conservatives keeping our DUP supply partners on side. But if I just don't mind my saying so to Peter, look, if Peter had supported the government consistently in this, as I have done, then we will be out of the EU by now.
But we wouldn't. But you know Bob, you know perfectly well. The EU withdrawal agreement is. EU withdrawal agreement is. I'm not even going to bother letting Peter answer this. The EU withdrawal agreement is Brexit in the eyes of a Remainer and not in the eyes of a Brexiteer.
That's your own particular style.
Yes, I know.
Julia, I don't think that's the view of the majority of people in this country.
I hate to tell you, the polls show it absolutely is the view of the majority of Leavers in this country. But Bob, let's just find.
We need a Brexit that works for both sides.
No, we don't. No, we don't, Bob. No. That's not how. That's not how. I hate
to bring this country back together.
Well,
that involves compromise.
Bob, you bring countries back together by the people who losing a referendum actually accepting the result of the referendum. When you have a binary referendum for leaving or remaining in the EU, there is no compromise option, and it's beholden to the people who lose that referendum to respect the result and work to make that work. It's not about compromising with the losers. That means we wouldn't actually let the winners win.
No, I'm afraid that's just nonsense, Julia. The reality is this. The referendum was whether or not we stayed or left. We voted to leave. It was not on how we leave or on the basis upon which we leave. That is obvious. So those of us who want to find a constructive way forward for the good of this country, not through imposing one view on everybody else, want to find a practical means of withdrawing. I accept that my side in the referendum lost. We've got to leave in an orderly and a business-like fashion.
Do you think that you'd have a better chance if you'd stood as the candidate?
No.
60% leave voting. At a time people are very angry about a Labour MP who's then become an independent after being convicted of lying to the police and turning up at the House of Commons wearing a tag. If you're not going to win in a seat like that, when are you going to win?
Well, the Leave vote is still very much in place. I mean, there's still a very clear majority for Leave in the constituency. It's just, as I say, quite a lot of Leave voters still voted Conservative, not understanding that the Conservative Party had no chance of winning. It was a two-horse race between us and the Labour Party. And I think as we get by-elections coming along, people will begin to understand that and start to vote tactically.
Well, this is the thing. The lesson may well be learned by the other parties. Actually, the Brexit Party, like what happened with UKIP before the mid two-terms elections, that actually you don't need to win those elections to actually have an influence because, of course, you've proven that you can stop the Conservatives winning and could possibly put a Corbyn government in. Do you think that this will focus minds at Conservative Central Office this morning about who should get elected as the next Conservative leader?
I think it's the other way around, Julia. I mean, the national opinion polls out last night from YouGov showed the Brexit Party 6 points in the lead in the country. I mean, that's a stunning figure. And the truth of it is, it's the Conservative vote that stopped the Brexit Party beating Labour. It's that way round.
We spoke earlier to Sir John Curtis, the guru of all pollsters and zoologists, and he said he says the polls, the Peterborough results suggest the polls are right, and we are now very much in four-party politics. Message we had from Lord Andrew Adonis, though, who stood and failed to be a Labour MEP at the June elections, told me earlier on that the lesson of Peterborough, in his words, is that the majority don't want right-wing extremism and are now against Brexit. What do you say to that?
I'm not sure what planet he's on.